I'll bring this up real quick. I don't know if you've ever read the book by ex-Mossad officer Viktor Ostrovsky. That was The Other Side of Deception, describing how the Mossad planned to assassinate George Bush at the Madrid Peace Conference in October of 1991 for the purpose of blaming it on Arab extremists. In other words, they have a history of this. This is what he said, quote, "Since the Mossad had all the security arrangements in hand, it would be not a problem bringing in the killers as close as they wanted to President Bush and then staging his assassination. In the ensuing confusion, the Mossad people would kill the perpetrator, scoring in another victory for the Mossad. With the assassins dead, it would be difficult to discover where the security breach had been, except that several countries involved in the conference, such as Syria, were regarded as countries that assisted terrorists." Those are his words, okay? Ex-Mossad officer Viktor Ostrovsky. And then, of course, you have something like the USS Liberty, where 34 Americans, in the interest of getting war started between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, just shot up our USS Liberty, which has now all been admitted. The Lavon affair and her involvement with the 1983 U.S. Marine barracks bombing in Beirut. We can't dismiss the idea that something like this could have happened as well. And just keeping in mind, if you even look at the beginnings of World War I or the JFK assassination, where security forces, or even the Ronald Reagan shooting, where security forces stand back and let it all happen, it almost looks like we have something very similar in the case of Fort Hood. I mean, am I going too far out on the limb to even just broach this and bring it up?
No, you're not, and raising these questions is the only way to get any kind of answers. Now, what you're talking about is pinning these mass shooters or so-called sleeper cells in America that are awoken to get the war going. I think that there's something just as important that needs to be focused on here, is at the same time of that entire psychological warfare, there is another element to this, where they're trying to now merge the radical extremist from around the world to the disgruntled youth of America. And, even in the case of the Pittsburgh shooting where they say there's a 9/11 truther, then you had that Holocaust Museum shooting where it was an 88-year-old white supremacist, but he's a militiaman and he believes that the Jews did 9/11. Do you see how they're merging both enemies? And this is right out of the Straussian philosophy of, or the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. And it's a stone's throw away from the exact ideology of the radical Islamist or the Sai Qutb theory, that the only way you could trick the world into thinking there's a jihad is that you have copycats, that actually it begins to look, it starts to take on the shape of something that is organized at a mass scale.
We can't ignore history, is all I'm saying. And again, we have to look at who benefits from something like this, and that has to be part of the discussion. We're not saying that this happened. I'm just laying out a few different scenarios, and I've got another one. One guy is saying 2 soldiers who were refusing to deploy had been treated by the good doctor, shot a bunch of other soldiers who had come to beat them up and force them to deploy. Some say that would explain the other suspects and the other guns. If this story's true, it means our military could be on the verge of mutiny, and that would certainly be something they would want to cover up.
That is what they are. I think that they're trying to lay out, is that all of these people that we've hired as translators, these Muslims in the military, because I read a report today that Hassan was saying to, or a medical personnel overheard him saying something about, don't underestimate sending a Muslim to kill a Muslim. So they're trying to show this whole mutiny. That's why they're going to get real strong on the war. This is going to help give aid.
But what I'm saying, I don't know if this has anything to do with being Muslim or not being Muslim, and maybe that this doctor got caught in the middle, and later this all just seemed like the best plausible way to spin it, because, again, never waste a good opportunity, never waste a good crisis. That could certainly have, I'm not saying this happened, but that could explain, again, multiple shooters, that there was a revolt, that these soldiers didn't want to deploy again for the 3rd or 4th time, coming out of that portal known as Fort Hood, and that they, in order to stop being beaten potentially, and this is maybe coming from a potential eyewitness, maybe not, we haven't completely verified it yet, but maybe that would explain, again, the ultimate 2nd and 3rd and 4th shooters.
I think you said it best, Jack. Just like Rahm Emanuel, never let a good crisis go to waste. We can already see how they're using this on many different levels psychologically to train people into thinking that there are sleeper cells all around us, and also to really give some kind of credence to why we need to be in Afghanistan and why Obama is going to send another 40,000 troops over there next week.
Do you think it's coincidence? And keep in mind, I mean, they gave him the Nobel Peace Prize. He has been coming under an inordinate amount of pressure from the anti-war left, a lot of people who did support him. And then there's those like Cindy Sheehan and Cynthia McKinney out there who have a lot of supporters and are very loud and trying to force him to adhere to his campaign promises, keeping in mind that he did promise to go after Afghanistan and hunt down and kill bin Laden during the campaign. So we can't just ignore that he said that. I think a lot of people might want to. So that certainly could be one of the prime benefits. Whether that was devised before and this thing was set up in order to get them to that point, or whether later they went, let's just take advantage of this, and this is going to work fine. Thank you very much. Here's another problem I have. The fact that this happened on Guy Fawkes Day. Do you see that as just a happy coincidence?
Well, remember the 5th of November, and you know as well as I do, they use these dates as psychological warfare for whatever reason they would like. And so, yeah, that was the first thing that I thought of as soon as it happened was, I can't believe it happened on Guy Fawkes Day. Plus, it's an act of, they're saying it's an act of terrorism because he jumped up and yelled Allah Akbar. But I tell you what, if an evangelical Christian jumped up and yelled, I can't wait to meet Jesus, or Jesus is great, and then did it, they wouldn't be saying that it's an Islamic terrorist. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of questions.
Let me put it like this. This was the 404th anniversary of the state-sponsored false flag terrorism or synthetic terror in the English-speaking world, Guy Fawkes Day. Interestingly enough, we have a 44th president here, and we cannot just sit by and look at all the little numerological calling cards, such as 13 dead, and then 29 injured, which equals 11. I always look at stuff like that because they like to leave these little calling cards sometimes. It's part of the overall Illuminati process. Might sound a little weird to some of my listeners, Matt, but we know they like to do these things, and it is like a cremation of care for them. If they admit it, and this is kind of a way that they admit it, then somehow their consciences are cleared. But few understand the Guy Fawkes plot. He was no fox. He was a dupe, ensnared by the chief minister himself into a madcap scheme to blow up a king in Parliament. The real plot was royally successful to invent a pretext for war with Spain, and the fraud was the foundation of the British Empire, keeping in mind that was a false flag event, using a lone guy to go in, cause the damage for the pretext for war with Spain. And that's why I think it's interesting that it happened on the 5th of November.
I agree. That was definitely one of those eerie coincidences, without a doubt. And I don't know if it is a coincidence. There's just no telling. I mean, he wasn't getting ready to get shipped off the next day. What made this guy snap all of a sudden to go from laughing about his meal there at the convenience store and then and the other thing, Jack, that I forgot to mention was there is one other thing that is kind of suspicious in this whole thing is according to the guy who rented the room to him, the day before the shooting, he was dressed in his Muslim attire, and another Muslim came who was also dressed in his attire. He had never seen the guy before. He had also never seen anybody actually go into Hassan's apartment in the whole time he was there. And they met for about 30 minutes, and then he left, and that was it. That was his only, and it was the day before the shooting.
There's so much to put on. I mean, we could just do 5 more hours on this, Matt. There's so much, including some of the people that that Mr. Hassan is linked to. This Al-Awlaki, who allegedly helped entrap the Fort Dix 6, the Toronto dupes. We start seeing all these connections in these mutual patsies and assets. Today I have a story on my website to CIA-approved Pakistan training camps, terrorist training camps, and then a story that goes along with that, millions and millions and millions of dollars being sent to the ISI in Pakistan to do these kinds of things. We've got the usual suspects, military and otherwise, working with and somehow funding and giving weapons for the Taliban. I mean, none of this really ends, and it all seems to kind of fit together perfectly, which is why I think we have every right to be suspicious about the Fort Hood shootings.